Welcome to Ned's Journal here on BlackBoxOnlineRadio. Feel free to come on in and chill with the birds. The episodes are going to come out more frequently on Black Box Online Radio, so I wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about some of the different changes in this channel over the years. Black Box Online Radio has now been running for almost 6 years, and I still cannot believe that. And as always, you can hit the like button, subscribe. Those are some of the best ways to help out the channel, but you can also go and visit some of the links in the description box, including the page for the Teespring store, the page for the book Killer on a White Horse, as well as BuyMeACoffee.com. That allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show, BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNid88, and anyone who makes a donation will get a shout-out on Zodiac Monday. Every Monday is Zodiac Monday here on Black Box Online Radio. But when I first started this channel, it wasn't solely focused on true crime, and it really wasn't until about 3 or 4 months into it when I just began to start sharing some things on the internet about what I thought in regards to unsolved mysteries, and I shared some things in 6 episodes about the Zodiac Killer, but I was more focused on the murder of Missy Beavers at the time, and that was a case that was somewhat contemporary, and compared to the timeline of the Zodiac Killer, it is still within recent times. But at that point, I was only talking about unsolved cases, and I was just saying my theory. I was watching 5 or 6 YouTube videos, and I was just putting out what I thought. And because it was called Black Box Online Radio, there were no images, no graphics on the screen, not a single ounce of imagery at all. There was just a black box there, and at the time I thought that that would be acceptable because I have heard so many YouTube channels that have done that, and believe it or not, the first YouTube channel that I heard that just had a black box on the screen with no images was from these 2 guys that were just telling like really dirty jokes, and I guess they didn't want to reveal their faces. But I listened to a lot of Howard Stern that way. Even some other true crime channels have done that, like not in the thumbnail, but they have shared just their content behind a black box. But in all of those instances that I just said, except for the dirty joke guys, they were famous people. I mean, Howard Stern, yes, okay, people are listening to him because he was a famous radio host. And I have a few regrets about that, just putting out all of those episodes with a black box on the screen. And, I mean, it's not too different than some of the other podcasts that are available on YouTube that just have a still image for the entirety of the episode. But at the same time, it's not very captivating. But that's what happened for about 2.5 years. I did the show that way, and in the first couple months, I noticed that there wasn't a very strong response. I mean, it's not like the older days. In 2011, I made YouTube videos, and if you were to put out a YouTube video, within 24 hours, you would get 100 views, and sometimes 200, and that's just the way that YouTube was at the time. And it definitely is not the type of studio-generated content creator that it is now. And I noticed that in 2017, when I was putting out these black box recordings, of course I wasn't getting 100 views in 24 hours. I was getting 0, maybe 1, and it would be me just listening back to my episode. And I remember the first time somebody left a comment, I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, I just couldn't believe it that somebody actually left a comment here on BBOR. So in 2017, people were following the content in the smallest possible way, and I thought that this was insufficient. And I actually had an idea for a novel that could have been written in blog format, and it was going to be called The Dark Voice of Cyberspace. And no, that's not meant to glamorize or glorify anything associated with me. It's just, it would be about somebody. I mean, I had this whole setup about what type of character and what type of living situation this character was going to be in, and that I would actually write the novel in blog format, like even on Google Blogspot, the whole thing would be electronic, but I would have these black box recordings that would be embedded in the text of the blog, so that people could actually listen to the segments. I was like, if nobody's listening to the channel, I might as well use it in a different way. And it would be this type of interactive novel called The Dark Voice of Cyberspace. But I also had to accept the lousy realization that that would have been something entertaining for 2003 when blogging was still something, and oh yeah, you have this blog that has these audio clips put into it. For 2017 and onward, I think that a lot of people are just beyond that, and it's not a very digestible form of content. But so I decided to just keep making episodes about any subject under the sun or in the darkness on Black Box Online Radio. And in 2019, I decided to have somewhat of a shift in the channel, going from just talking about unsolved mysteries in my particular theory to discussing the psychology of the cases. For the first time, I really began to put together these types of plans about what would I do if I had more resources, more time, more budget, features. Like, what would I do if I were to make a bigger YouTube channel or a bigger podcast? How exactly would that look? And I mean, there are so many radio hosts out there that do programs that are 3 hours long, and I thought I could do that. Absolutely, I could do that. And I developed this whole plan about how I was going to become a professional podcaster, YouTuber, and true crime author all at the same time. And there were two people that were really the inspiration for that. One of them was a true crime writer named Jeffrey Dean Doty, who wrote the book Piggyback about the murder of Maria Ridulph. And the other was Webster Tarpley, who is a radio host and more famously a historian who talks about well, in the past, he talked a lot about historical conspiracy theories, and he was part of the 9/11 Truth movement, and then he veered more toward political commentary. But I got on to Jeffrey Dean Doty because I was just listening to YouTube videos about the murder of Maria Ridulph, and he talked about the research process for writing a true crime book. And he said sometimes it comes down to 4 months of research and 2 months of writing. And I was like, well, goodness, I mean, 4 months of research, 2 months of writing? I already know how to do it. He just told me everything. So I was like, that's how I would become a true crime author. And when I would listen to the show hosted by Webster Tarpley, it was called World Crisis Radio. And I noticed that he wasn't a perfect broadcaster, not like some of those famous radio hosts where absolutely everything they say is in perfect intonation, and you can hear every single word, every single syllable, and they don't mispronounce anything. They never say He had a lot of imperfections in his broadcasting style, and you could hear him fumbling around with papers. And I realized that you don't have to have that type of perfect speech pattern to be a YouTuber or to be a podcaster. So I was like, well, I could do that. And that's why I thought, I'm going to put on a 3 hour show. Like, I'm just going to record a 3 hour podcast and I'm going to release it on one of these free sites. I had looked into LaunchPad 1 a little bit, but I really wanted to use podcast.com, a website that I listened to rather frequently at the time. And I was going to do that for 3 hours a day. And the other time, like, let's see, I wanted to have a 9 to 5 schedule. So I guess 9 to 12 I would work on that, just release 3 hours of content about any particular subject. And then I was going to spend the rest of the time, those other 5 hours from 12 to 5, researching a true crime case. And the case that I had actually selected was the death of Henry McCabe from Minnesota. Henry McCabe was originally a man from Liberia, and he came to the United States, and he started experiencing some financial trouble, and he just got intoxicated one night, and his friends were driving him home, but they drove him in the wrong direction, more or less, and they let him out at a gas station, and later on he was found dead in a lake or pond, or I mean, I guess you could call it a lake, a body of water, I mean, outside of Minneapolis or in the Minneapolis area. And the reason why that case is particularly famous is because a voicemail had been recorded where he had more or less, I don't even want to misstate something, a number had been accidentally dialed and someone had been conferenced in, like, it was actually recorded because somebody just heard these weird noises on a phone call with Henry McCabe, and they tried to conference a third person into the call, and that went to voicemail, and that was actually recorded, and he's just grunting and growling, and at one point a voice says, "Stop it," and people weren't sure, was he murdered by the police, was he tased, and did he fall into a body of water, or was he having some type of mental breakdown, or was he just being chased by somebody and someone injured him and he ended up in the lake. I mean, it was a very perplexing story. And the reason why I chose that particular case was because I didn't quite have I didn't have a theory immediately. I mean, I would watch true crime stuff on YouTube, and for 2.5 years, I'm just saying what I think. I'm just sharing my particular theory on the subject, and I'm just running my mouth on the internet. You think I run my mouth on the internet now? Oh, I did it even worse back then, because I would watch 5 or 6 YouTube videos and I would think that I had the ability to solve a true crime case. But I really wasn't quite sure what to make of that one. Like, nothing was pointing me in any particular direction. Murder, accidental death, suicide. I mean, I just wasn't able to figure it out. So I thought that would be the case that I would explore for the book, and it was originally going to be called Friendly Error, The Death of Henry McCabe. And I chose that title because I wanted to really explore the angle of how his friends dropped him off, far away from his home, so that he was left in an intoxicated state in a way in which he would not have had the easiest access of getting home. And then I thought, that's just an inappropriate title. I mean, if I don't know what happened, to actually just zone in on the friend who was driving the car, friendly error would be unacceptable. So I thought of the name Calling from a Nightmare, The Death of Henry McCabe, and that was the book that I was planning on writing. But I just couldn't go through with it. I mean, I don't think I was ready to take the financial risk of just moving to Minneapolis for 4 months and just trying to be a true crime writer and podcaster, and just putting my stuff out, not even on YouTube, but on podcast.com, and just hoping that some way, somehow, somebody would find it. And in retrospect, that would not have been the most advantageous idea to put into action. But I do remember very clearly that I wanted to keep Black Box Online Radio, and I thought that even if I had this 9 to 5 job as a true crime author and podcaster, in the evenings I'm still going to do Black Box Online Radio the way I was doing at the time. But ultimately I had to deal with the realization that it was just more practical to keep my day job and lifestyle and to just do Black Box Online Radio in the evenings, like the way I did at the time. Very frequently I would record at about 9 p.m. at night, and I started adding in the pink bubbles that you'll see on some of the other older Black Box episodes, so it just turned into a true crime channel that was podcast-oriented, and I was just doing any type of subject. Yes, some about the Zodiac Killer, but I went months without talking about the Zodiac Killer at some point, because in 2019 I was also very much focused on the the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. I repeat, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. That is one of the world's most famous unsolved mysteries, maybe the most famous unsolved missing persons case in the world. But I had moved on from this idea of having a 3-hour podcast that nobody would listen to, as well as the true crime book. And to this day, I still have not yet authored a true crime book, and a lot of people have requested a book about the Zodiac Killer. I had a couple ideas, and one of them was going to be called The Zodiac Killer in the Internet Age. And the reason why I chose that title was I wanted to just write it as a true crime memoir, like specifically on my journey exploring the Zodiac Killer mystery, starting as a kid watching about the Zodiac on TV, making the early episodes of Black Box Online Radio, and then making more and more content, and ultimately launching Zodiac Monday, where I talk about the Zodiac Killer every week in a show called the Zodiac Killer News Report, and all of the observations that I've made, because that would be a way where I can actually share the genuine pieces of info and the contributions that I believe I've made to the Zodiac Killer mystery, and it's shocking for some guy like me to say that, someone who is just sitting around watching YouTube videos, but there are certain pieces of info that I think I have shared publicly already that, I feel are genuine contributions to that case. So, one of the reasons why I wanted to keep exploring the Zodiac mystery was that I felt I was going somewhere with that, but I really wanted to make it very clear that it's not just what I think. It'll be telling the story of how I experienced this stuff. And twice I tried to write out the manuscript for that book, The Zodiac Killer in the Internet Age, but it's really quite different than just talking about things all willy-nilly here on Black Box Online Radio. No, it's a different experience altogether, because on the on paper, like for the book, it just didn't come out right. It was like, this just isn't me. I'm trying to sort of write and ramble the way that I talk and ramble here on Black Box Online Radio, and twice I scrapped that book, the Zodiac Killer in the Internet Age. I would write about 5 to 10 pages and be like, no, this just isn't something that I'm going to put out yet. But also, at that point, I thought about, reshaping the channel in a particular way, and I wanted to keep the Zodiac content, but part of me was still thinking about expanding the length of the shows. Maybe not exactly 3 hours, like I thought, the famous radio shows go 3 hours, but just definitely to do a longer segment. And there were two particular ways that I thought of doing this, and they were adding in more or less just very general discussion shows. One of them would not even be true crime related. And what I was going to do was, I was going to have a morning show that was going to start at 6 a.m., and there was going to be an evening show that would start at 6 p.m. Maybe they would both go for an hour, and the 6 p.m. show would be called The Bold Answer, and the morning show would have been called Bag of Questions, like questions and answers. And the Bold Answer was supposed to be a show that was going to focus more on the true crime aspects of stuff, and the morning show would focus on just pulling off random discussion questions from the internet. I used to love doing that. Like, when you can even find them online, they're just these lists of like conversation questions. I used to be an English teacher, so we would do this in class, and just discussion points. And it was called Bag of Questions because I was just going to pull them like off the internet, print them out, cut them up, and pull them out of a bag and like be like, okay, this is the question. Then I thought, wow, that is so much extra effort. So then I thought, I'll change the name to Book of Questions, and then I can just read off one. Then I don't have to spend any time preparing. And you pull out a question or something. What is the first memory where you felt sad in life? And then you would try to answer something like that. And I've done a little bit of that here on Black Box Online Radio, but just a little bit. Maybe on the episode where I was high on legal ecstasy, I would just answer questions. And then, again, that plan didn't take off as well because it just proved to be a little bit too time consuming to do a show at 6 a.m., work 9 to 5, and then do a show at 6 p.m. And I still wasn't completely sure about how I wanted to launch that. Would that be a podcast? Would that be in video format? And the third and final revamping for the channel that I wanted to do but I haven't done, just sharing with you guys, is making it purely Zodiac related for the evenings and having a longer show for the mornings. I had been really tempted to get back to the daily YouTube cycle. For about 2 years now, I've done, maybe more than 2 years really, I've done the show with 3 episodes a week minimum. Zodiac Monday, Wednesday has been a floating topic, and Friday is the anything goes where any subject is fair game. And I wanted to get back to my daily format. I used to just do the show every day for, well, it started out being 14 minutes because I didn't do the YouTube verification, but I would just do a podcast segment every day. It started out being 14 minutes. Then after I did the verification, it got up to 20 minutes. And I really missed that experience of just making an episode every day for 20 minutes. Something where I would just ramble and go on and on and on, but, like have a rather strong cutoff. And that's me. There's a reason why I did that. That's my personality. I would spend all day thinking about the episode that I was going to do for the night. And, sometime between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., I would record the episode. And I wanted to get back into that cycle. and I was going to launch a segment called Zodiac Z365, where every day I would do a short episode, 20 minutes maximum, about the Zodiac Killer, and I had a whole set of topics planned on. I was actually going to go through Robert Graysmith's book Zodiac chapter by chapter for the first couple episodes and just respond to them and share some things. But again, for the morning show, I wanted to launch True Crime Talk Radio. That is a segment that I created back in 2021 where I noticed that, it's just an idea that kind of came to me once where I really found that there wasn't a channel out there that was discussing true crime cases in a multi-discussion format where you just would be talking about multiple true crime cases over the course of a 1 to 3 hour episode. A good example of this from the 1970s was actually Mae Brussels' Dialogue Conspiracy, where she's talking about the news, she's talking about true crime theories, she's talking about famous players in the true crime world. And I do mean famous players because a lot of Mae Brussels' work was about the assassination of JFK. And something that she also pointed out is that the crime that Mae Brussels truly explored was the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald, because of course many people think that Lee Harvey Oswald played a role in the assassination of Kennedy. Other people think that he was the patsy, right? But no matter what, even if he did it, let's just say hypothetically Oswald was the lone gunman. Well, he was murdered by Jack Ruby, and Oswald was indeed murdered, but so many people don't exactly focus in on that. They say that he was shot, but they don't necessarily say that Oswald was murdered. And someone investigating the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald the first time that I heard that phraseology used was when I was reading up about Mae Brussels in 2020, and I have multiple episodes about her observations. They're called Queen of Conspiracy here on this channel, and I have at least 3 podcast recordings solely dedicated to Mae Brussels, and she has come up in some of the AMAs that I did for a while. So that was another plan that I had, to do True Crime Talk Radio. And it would, of course, be done in a podcast format, but True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, and in the evenings, I would do Zodiac Z365. And I really wanted to make it complete. 365 days, a 20-minute episode about the Zodiac Killer every day. And with shorter episodes, I would be able to organize the format a little bit more easily and a little bit more clearly. And I could think of it as presentations, but all of those would require, all of that setup would require doing it 100% professionally, being 100% dedicated to that. Like, I wouldn't be able to work a day job and do True Crime Talk Radio plus the Zodiac Z365. So, I've definitely been able to explore some of those possibilities in the past, and some of those might come up. I highly doubt I would do Bag of Questions. That was just something that I found amusing at the time, that maybe wouldn't have been the best show. I definitely think that I could make a reasonably good discussion program based on conversation questions from the internet, but maybe not in that exact format. However, I still plan on doing something larger. And, guys, for years, I have been recording the show from West Virginia. Right now, I'm actually coming to you from the Philippines, and I'll be here for a little while. So I've had more time in the day to put things into episodes, and the episodes are going to come out more frequently. And there's still going to be the 3-day-a-week lineup, plus, hopefully, Ned's Journal is going to come out on the other days, and there are going to be a few more short episodes in the near future. As I said, like, subscribe. You can visit BuyMeACoffee.com, but that's ultimately where the channel is at yet, and I really don't like it that it's just going to be some type of unorganized releasing content when I have the ability to do so. So over the next week, I'm going to try and fine-tune the schedule to anyone who's listening to this live, and if you found this episode in the future, feel free to visit some of the new content that has been created. But there are going to be more shorts. There are going to be more episodes that are going to mostly explore the true crime world, but also keeping up with some, daily vlogs and journals, because, the reason why I wanted to use the term Ned's Journal was I didn't only want it to be focused on unsolved mysteries and criminal psychology, also talking just about daily life, so to speak, and checking in with you guys. How's everybody doing? So, for the last 6 years, those are some of the ways that I thought about expanding the channel, and I didn't do. I mean, with the exception of making more content like things that have happened over the last 7 days. But I mean, I've shared with you guys maybe 4 or 5 plans that I had for the channel, as well as writing books that didn't truly take shape. But I appreciate everyone who's listened to this episode. I was just thinking that this was going to be like a 5 minute thing where I was just going to tell you the 5 plans that I had. It turned out to be something well over 25 minutes. But that's what happens sometimes with the internet. You just start going on and on, talking about something, and it leads to another idea. So thank you so much for listening to this episode, and anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box, and there is always BlackBoxNid88 over on Instagram. And I will see you there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.